Okay, in this video we're going to wrap up our conversation about composition, and we will not have covered every topic. As I said at the beginning, it's a huge area of study, but we'll have gone through most of the principles that are the most important principles that, anyway, for me that I think about when I'm composing. So we've got four more today, and the first that I'm going to talk about is movement. And everybody defines these a little bit differently. For me, what movement means first and foremost is that as an artist, we want to bring the viewer in and allow them to kind of travel through our painting and move through the painting so that they're experiencing the whole rectangle. I may have mentioned that before. So it's almost like you're trying to, you're kind of giving like a walking tour of your painting, like pulling them in and moving them around. And that movement should be thought of as not as, on the one hand, it should be thought of as two-dimensional, like how you move them just two-dimensionally across your composition, but also three-dimensionally, like what kind of spatial movement do you have in terms of back and forth, if that's important to you in your work. If you're working from observation and traditional space is interesting to you, then that's also a consideration. So that, so again, the main thing about movement is that you're trying to engage the viewer with the whole rectangle, not just a little part. Because we're going to be, if we're able to take in the whole visually, then we're going to be able to take in your idea visually. If you're just sort of sending us to one little area and then we lose interest, then it's going to be harder for us to come to terms with the idea that it is that you're trying to convey. Movement is really created through some of the things that we've talked about: repetition and line. So like in this composition, I've got this figure here in the foreground, and it's sort of pointing me in this direction, and then I move to this section here, and this sort of pushes me this way to this, over to here. I pull over, down, back around to here. So it's it really depends on you being able to translate the object into a formal idea that has a particular kind of direction to it. So, things are not just things, they're things that point or curve us or move us in a particular way. So that's movement. And then, three-dimensionally, so that takes me on kind of a two-dimensional tour, kind of a circular tour. And that's not the only way to move someone through your painting. You can move them up and down or however you want. You're in charge of it, but it really depends on you being able to, again, convert the object into a formal, directional type idea or form. And then dimensionally, I'm pushing you sort of back in space and then forward again, okay? So that's movement. Rhythm is really, I think of as the quality of movement. What's the movement like? Is it sort of languorous and organic and slow moving, or is it more geometric and hard and sharp? Am I starting you and stopping you? What's the quality of the movement? So not just the pathway, but the quality of that pathway in terms of speed, in terms of stopping and starting. Okay. And those things, obviously, like kind of rhythm that you create is going to, is really going to depend on your idea. You want those two to link up and make sense, so that if your idea is, you want to create a feeling of sort of calm and gentleness, then you're not going to create a rhythm that's sort of harsh and stopping and starting. You want to create something that's a little bit more continuous and gentle feeling. All right. Okay, activity and rest. And I've talked about this. I've kind of I've sort of nibbled around the edges of this before, but the idea is that in a composition, you want to just think about variety, varying like the kind of patterning or shape making that you make. So if I'm all over, and we sort of did this a little bit before, but if I'm all over and everything is just kind of the same and there's no place to rest here because I have this overall pattern, then it may be a little bit more difficult for the eye to take in than if I think about areas that are sort of open and rest and that are offsetting these more patterned areas. So it's just, kind of goes back to that idea of taking stock of the amounts, thinking about the proportion of things. How much sort of tight patterning am I creating? Whether it's, a really busy area of cloth or, that's got stripes or something on it. Do I want that pattern all over so that it's kind of overwhelming, or do I want to sort of contain it in an area and have that balanced by an open, quiet area so that the eye is sort of, can kind of focus on things longer if it has these sort of rest spots. So it's just something to keep in mind as you're designing. The last idea, which I really should have talked about at the beginning when I was talking about format, but is scale. So your idea, you want to think about just the literal size of it. So, like when you look at a Vermeer, which is very small, there's an intimacy to it, and sort of as a consequence, there's a particular kind of a feeling that's created by a head on a small scale, say. Now, if I take that same head and I blow it up to over life-size proportions, that's going to have a very different impact on the viewer. It won't feel so intimate. It'll feel kind of overwhelming, and some artists have used that to effect. So, so you need to think about your idea and what's the right scale or size, and also just realize, like when you're doing your little compositional sketches, just because it works on this scale doesn't mean like when you blow it up, it's going to work. Like there may be, like as you go up in scale, areas that were very sort of simple, but sort of held their own compositionally on a small scale. When you go larger, you might start feeling blank, and you might have to do something else to make it work. So keep that in mind. But the main thing with scale is that, it can be a powerful part of that idea that you have. Okay, so those are the four ideas that I wanted to get through today. And again, I'll just say at the end here, as I said at the beginning, a lot of the ability to use these ideas, these compositional ideas, really depends on your ability to translate object into formal ideas: line, tone, shape, color. Like that's sort of one of the critical issues here in composition is not being object tied all the time, but to be able to look at something and say, oh, that's not just a vase, that has this shape, it's got this kind of pointing quality to it, or whatever it is. But to be able to translate things in the world into their formal, their formal selves, so that you can see what the graphic consequence of putting them on your page or on your canvas are going to be.